awake and with us today. We do want to welcome you all as we gather together. If you've not done so, take the white welcome booklet and pass that around. There are prayer request cards in there if you have a prayer request. We invite you to please put that in the offering plate a little bit later on. We'd be glad to share that with our congregation. We have a number of announcements we'd love to share with you. There we go. But first of all, go Vikings. Okay, just had to throw that out there. If you Packer fans, we had to have that represented as well. So that's from the first service. But we do have other more important things that we need to do. We have the Lens on the Border exhibit going on. I'm not
That's
sure.
me.
Is that you? Somebody's talking about that.
Somebody's talking about that. We do, if you were not here during Faith Formation Hour and you had a chance to walk around with all of the kids and the other families as well, please make sure that you stop in and look after service during fellowship lunch or after. This will be up through the 30th. So we are really excited about it. It's a beautiful exhibit. There's also some activity stations that Lydia has set up to engage us in more than just viewing the art. If you have any questions, we'd love to talk to you about it. It's a really great way to experience life on the border, and you're going to hear more about it today. So,
Great, thank you for that. Also, we have several things coming up. Debbie, you're going to talk to the online auction as she's coming up. There we go.
Tomorrow we'll actually kick off our online auction. So thanks to everybody who helped support through donations. We're working with Orinoco Online Auctions this year. I know we did get a call on Friday inquiring how come they can't see anything. The way Orinoco Online Auctions work is you can't see the items until the day the auction actually kicks off, which is going to be tomorrow. So please go ahead and check out tomorrow. However, you can go today because you're going to need to register to get a bidding number in order to bid or purchase some of these items. It will ask for a credit card number. It will not charge your credit card right away. You can pay by cash, I think check, I'm not sure, or credit card, but it just needs the credit card information to validate you are who you are. That helps alleviate any pseudo weirdo people that sign in with John Doe and then it doesn't show up for picking up the item. So go ahead and register. There's a little insert in your bulletin handouts, so you can refer to that. Just go to their website and register, and then tomorrow start looking at the items and start bidding on them. I did get a call or email yesterday, so it's actually going to go through September 24th. So we've got one extra day for our online auction bidding. So please take a look at that and help us raise some money for Peace Church Ministries.
a few other announcements about youth activities. We are kicking off Youth Stuff Hard this week. So middle school, high school, today is the start of weekly Wednesdays. So come at 5 if you want to help with dinner. Come afterwards and just enjoy dinner with us. And then we'll have some time downstairs in the dwelling to play games, get to know each other, engage in some conversation. It's a really great way to engage with other youth in our community. So if you are a youth, if you have youth in your family, if you know people who might be interested, please come on down. It's going to be a great Wednesday. It's just a really wonderful, casual way to meet together. And then this Friday is actually our first big fellowship youth event, and we'll be going out to Winters Farm, not just to play for the evening like we've done in the past. We'll actually do an overnight there. So sign up at the welcome desk with Claire, or online. You can do that as well. It's going to be a really fun time. We're going to stay overnight in tents and wake up the next morning, have fresh eggs. We're going to run with chickens, play with the goats. It'll just be a really good time.
Play with Brian.
And play with Brian.
There you go. So we do give thanks for all the ministries and things that are taking place here. There's also a Hawthorne Helps item we need to lift up.
Yes, so we're doing a very, very short collection. It's only 2 weeks. We're looking for body lotion and body wash. The only items that they're looking for, but they're really running low on those right now and could use our help. So if you can bring something in between now and the 30th, please do so. The bin will be right out here in the coat hallway, and it's just an easy way to make sure those in our network are getting what they need.
Good, thank you for that. We do want to lift up a couple of other special items. Lil DeYoung, Tom DeYoung's aunt, is over at Samaritan, and she's been put into hospice care, so we do want to indeed have Lil and I thoughts and prayers during this time. We also have a special event for you next Sunday. I hope that you will be here. Invite your friends. A gentleman by the name of Micah Meyer will be here with us, and he's had an incredible story He'll be coming to sing and to preach with us. You're going to hear a little bit about a story in a moment. But please try to make every effort to be here. He'll be presenting at both services next Sunday. But the story is just very compelling, very powerful. So if you fire that up for me, and we will give a little intro about what his journey's about.
Micah Meyer was inspired by his late father's love for the road and his devotion to God. But his faith has taken him on a whole different journey.
These are experiences you can only have by standing at that mountaintop and looking around, staring out into God's creation and seeing the splendor.
Micah Meyer is no stranger to life on the road. The 32-year-old adventurer has seen it all, from the heights of the Grand Canyon to the depths of the Pacific Ocean. It's all a part of his effort to set a world record as he travels to every National Park Service site in the country, all 417 of them in one trip. So this has been your home for
For the past 2 years, yeah.
couple years.
I sleep in parking lots and have driven over 44,000 miles in this sucker.
And this is your map of this is your journey. In the last 2 years, Micah has traveled nonstop in his van, visiting more than 300 national park sites, coast to coast. He has one more year to go. It's a trip inspired by Micah's father, Larry, a Lutheran minister with a love for the open road. He passed away when Micah was just 19 years old.
It just totally changed my perspective as far as tomorrow's not guaranteed. And my dad often joked if he hadn't been a pastor, he probably would have been a trucker because he just loved driving so much.
Being on the road with him or some of your fondest memories. Do you feel like he's along with you on this journey?
Totally. I mean, the life values I would have gained with him on those road trips, I hope that I'm able to pick up through the people I meet and the experiences I have.
But over the last few months, Micah's mission has grown into more than just honoring his dad or breaking a world record. He's setting out to build bridges.
So what they're gonna do is tow me on
As he began sharing his adventures online, Micah kept a secret, one he was afraid would cost him people's support.
You are gay, and was it hard, the way you were raised, to come out?
It was super hard. I mean, they say you have to choose. You can either be gay and you can't be a Christian, or you can be a Christian and you have to stay in the closet. I spent my whole life praying that God would keep me from being gay. And the answer I kept getting back from God through prayer was, it's okay, stop asking. It's okay, be who you are. I love you as you are. The world can know that they are welcome to be who God made them to be. And
Micah decided to start visiting churches along his trip. And as he stepped onto the pulpit, he stepped out on faith, and he began sharing his story.
I've been at some churches where the pastor said, we've never talked about LGBT issues in our church. You'll be the first person maybe they've ever known who's an openly gay Christian.
In this life we've come so far.
The response was powerful. People embraced his message of God's inclusive love.
People come up to me crying and they say, my daughter's a lesbian, or my nephew is gay, or my uncle's transgender, and they pour out their hearts to me because for the first time maybe in their church they felt allowed to.
Micah's living his story and bringing some healing to others who have felt that estrangement from this place that is supposed to be so welcoming.
How has your faith guided you through this entire process?
When I began this, people told me it couldn't be done. So having the faith that I could be who I was and still do this project, and that people would embrace it and that it would change lives,
Makes you feel pretty good.
it's a humbling and awesome experience.
Though Micah never had the chance to come out to his father, he says his dad would be proud of who he is today.
He's just in heaven laughing because his son, who swore he'd never be a minister, is basically leading a ministry across the country. Now I'm able to follow his footsteps and help provide a world of inclusion for people who don't see themselves otherwise.
A world Micah is discovering and creating, one bold and faith-filled step at a time.
Powerful story, and I hope you will take that in next week. He has an incredible contra-tenor voice, which that high voice, beautiful singing voice, but his story is just as powerful. So come and join us, invite your friends, let's join together. We're going to invite you as we come together to please rise if you're able, as we come together through music and the spirit of the day, that all together we lift up our hands and celebrate, for we are the church.
Hear these words from Scripture from Proverbs chapter 1. Wisdom cries out in the street, in the squares she raises her voice. At the busiest corner she cries out, at the entrance to the city gates she speaks. Lady Wisdom goes out in the street and shouts. At the town center she makes her speech. In the middle of traffic she takes her stand. How long will you wallow in ignorance? Cynics, how long will you feed your cynicism? How long will you refuse to learn? About faith, I can revise your life. Look, I'm ready to pour out my spirit on you. I'm ready to tell you all I know. God of justice and peace, we don't always understand how your justice and peace fit together. We don't always understand how our faith and actions can transform the world. As we read your ancient words again today, we ask your wisdom to speak again. Tell us of the great love for our immigrant and refugee neighbors, and show us your way of just peace, because we are all together, united as brothers and sisters and siblings of faith.
What a great way for us to come together. We are all bound together, or one another's shelter as God is our shelter as well. If you just join me in a moment of prayer, if you'll join me on this as we come together before God and one another. Merciful God, your wisdom calls to us, but we do not hear. We confess that we ignore your calls and your commandments to welcome the stranger. We exclude, ignore, and demean each other by drawing lines and building borders. Forgive our selfishness and our lack of imagination. Holy wisdom, stir our hearts and inspire us to build your peace in our community. My friends, wisdom cries out in the street, and she never stops. As long as there is injustice, wisdom will work and call and bring justice to her people. In wisdom's steadfast love, we are held and we are forgiven, and we are bound together in the common spirit as we pray together the prayer which Jesus first taught. Our Creator.
Good morning, everybody. I must have scared them. I told them in Faith Formation that I was going to ask questions about the artwork they saw, and so now nobody came up to be with me. Anybody else out there that wants to come join us up here? So good morning, everybody. Okay. Yeah, there's my man. It's for all ages. So this morning, you guys had a chance to walk through the art exhibit with our Faith Formation classes. So who can tell me one photo that they saw that they really liked? What was something you saw out there? Did you see anything that you liked? Did you do anything fun in there? What did you get to do?
Cry was in a Thursday. We on the bus, and Helen went to the bus, and then she go on the bus.
Yes, that is the storyline to The Incredibles. That is true. But I don't think we watched that in Fellowship Hall today. I think we saw some pictures. Did we see pictures of?
We watched Coco on the Fellowship Hall.
Yes. So. No. So what you do see in there right now, right, is pictures of people and cactus and water, right? And there's a bison up on the wall. And all of that stuff goes into this idea of the border. So when we think about borders and we think about walls and we think about somebody telling us to help, what's something you think that we could do with that? If you've seen those pictures, there's one in there about a jaguar, right? There's a video about the jaguars. So we have to know these things, right? But we don't just have to know them, we also have to
I got
understand them.
a bear in my big jacket.
So this morning I asked you at first service what you thought your wisdom was, and I thought it was storytelling. Do you guys think that you have a wisdom to share too? What do you think? Des, do you have a wisdom to share? Do you have something that you're really passionate about? What about you, Kaylee? Wisdom is definitely a butterfly. It flies away. And there's origami butterflies in there, right?
Gummy bears too.
Gummy bears too.
And ice cream. And cake. And garlic.
And you are far down the rabbit hole, my love.
And
So, I do want to hear something though. I want to know what's one thing you think you could speak really loudly about. We know what Tyler can speak really loudly about, a lot of things. But what's one thing you think you could talk really loudly about? What do you think? If I handed you the microphone, what would you talk about, Viv? You would just say hi. Okay, well, welcome is a good thing to talk about, right?
I do it on
You talk loud enough as it is. So I want to have Lydia come up here because she's going to talk to us a little bit more about what all is going on in there. And then we can talk about how that is a part of who we are, not just viewing that art, but also experience it.
All right, so I want to talk to all of us for a little bit about what the Lens on the Border exhibit is and why we explored it intergenerationally. So the Lens on the Border is made by the Sierra Club. That's a group of people that work on how things that people do affect other people and plants and animals. So did you see any plants or animals in there? Talked about a couple with Beth, right? Cacti, jaguars, those little boars. Mike, what do you call those little boars that are in Arizona? Is he not here? Anyway, not important. We'll move on. But the other question being, why intergenerational? So this is a move we're making intentionally as a community to connect with each other across generations. And I don't know about you, but when I look at the world right now, I see a lot of mess. I see a border that divides people based on nationality, skin color. I see families who are being detained just for coming to ask for help. And I see all kinds of craziness, and to me it feels like such a big mess. I have a 9-year-old son, and often his room turns into a very, very big mess. Your room ever turned into a big mess? Yeah, he likes to collect things. He collects a lot of things. He collects cars and Legos and books and Pokemon cards. Anybody else here collect Pokemon cards? So Pokemon cards, he had a favorite one that he needed to find, and his room was a huge mess, and he could not find it. And he became very concerned. The concern was so big. He started to cry, and he said, "Mom, I can't find my favorite one anywhere. And my room is such a big mess, and it's my fault, and I should have done something different, and here it is." And he just was melting into a big puddle of little boy. And I said, "Okay, we have this big thing that concerns us. What can we do?" So we started to clean the room. And when he finally found it, he started to gather all of his Pokemon cards, and he grabbed a duffel bag, and he put them all in there. And I thought, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Mom, finding this Pokemon card felt like searching for a needle in a haystack, but I'm making a smaller haystack." And when I think about the big mess that I see in our world today, I think, there is so much that concerns me. And there are things that we can influence, like voting and writing our senators and some of the things we did together in the Lens on the Border exhibit. But there is also something that we can do. We can look at our smaller haystack. Together here, we can learn and grow. we can increase our knowledge and our empathy, and we can model a different kind of community for our children. So we need each other for that. And so I invite you to engage the art exhibit this morning during fellowship lunch with people of other ages, and start to ask these questions about what can we do in our little haystack.
Awesome. So, will you pray with me? God, we thank you for our smaller haystacks and all that. Will you join me in prayer? Gracious God and source of all good gifts, thank you for the resources in our lives, in our community, and in our nation. Thank you for all that we share today to make our lives, our community, and our nation more welcoming. Bless us in this ministry that continues to seek your peace and justice. Amen. From our opening words into our passage this morning, we heard this call from Lady Wisdom, Sophia, who cries out in the street, who raises her voice. At the busiest corner we heard her, she cries out. At the town center, she continues, "Since you laugh at my counsel and make a joke of my advice, can I take you seriously? I'll turn the tables and joke at your troubles. What if the roof falls in and your whole life goes to pieces? What if catastrophe strikes and there's nothing to show for your life but rubble and ashes? You'll need me then. You'll call for me, but don't expect an answer. No matter how hard you look, you won't find me. Because you hated knowledge and had nothing to do with the love of God, because you wouldn't take my advice and brushed aside all my offers to train you. Well, you've made your bed, now lie in it. You wanted your own way, now how do you like it? Don't you see what happens, you simpletons? Carelessness kills, complacency is murder. First pay attention to me and then relax. Now you can take it easy, you're in good hands. This week, we join with other UCC churches in celebrating Just Peace Sunday, an opportunity to speak to our commitment to our neighbors and our call to justice and witness in a troubled, bruised, or chaotic world. Here at Peace, we stay firm in our commitments to peace and justice, to witnessing to God's radical love for all throughout every service. And so many times, such a specific focus wouldn't even be noticed. But this year, the theme of Just Peace Sunday goes with that image you just saw of wisdom crying out. A call to seek justice on the U.S.-Mexico border. And it coincides exactly with the opening weekend of that photography exhibit we've been talking about that Ray Dunn helped us secure for the next few weeks. And if you haven't had a chance, please make sure that you experience it today or this week. Bring your friends back. By investigating, by seeing, by engaging in the multitude of ways that the border impacts human, animal, and ecological life, we begin to take a stance. What does a wall really have to do with us? Well, last night, Rick Morris from the Sierra Club told us a lot. Even though there may be a border miles away, it affects us here. Just Peace Sunday is celebrated on the Sunday preceding the UN International Day of Prayer for Peace. The UCC says this about the commemoration of the day. Just Peace is not a destination, but a path, requiring awareness and constant vigilance to resolve existing and developing conflict in ourselves, our families, our communities, our institution, our world. This path requires nonviolence when possible, and even when impossible, to engage in love and restraint. Just Peace envisions a renewed, vibrant, diverse, and sustainable world free of violence. It is grounded in God's activity in creation, in covenant, in patience, in being provided for in the wilderness. As Christians, we offer this conviction to the world: peace is possible. So into this Just Peace Sunday, we envision together a world where peace is not just possible, but constantly on our lips and in our vision, with images like this one. From artist Bob Torres, we envision a world different than the one we see around us. A world where water is plentiful for those who are thirsty, not just by far and few between water jugs placed by good Samaritans out in the desert, but flowing freely like the ancient oceans that once covered all. And Just Peace isn't just about water. The issues on the border aren't just about water, but water is vital to hearing the cry of wisdom in this passage, to hearing the call of the animal, plant, and human life when the story is buried beneath so many other headlines. In reflecting on her experience last year at the Border Convergence, Ray mentioned to us this week that the simplicity of going without water, even for a moment, was influential to her. When you walk out the door here in Minnesota, do you have your water bottle with you? Some of us do. We all have that constant list of things, your keys, your phone, your wallet, your water bottle, but not all of us. How many of you brought your own water bottle here to church today? Raise it up. If that's all that you had today, would you make it? Would all of the rest of us make it? The justice wisdom is calling us to through Lens on the Border, through our faith, is the justice born not just of a prophetic call from the street, but a call from all of creation. Lady Wisdom, given to us in this week's text, claims her own place at creation in a later chapter of Proverbs as a master builder at God's side in making the foundations of the earth. This is the wisdom that calls to us, that surrounds us, water, desert, human, plant, animal. The wisdom who created goodness calls us to account now. Wisdom is calling to us from parched throats, as well as throats surrounded by the undrinkable waters of hurricanes and tropical storms threatening our world today. Water clears our throats and allows us the voice to speak. And when we speak, when wisdom speaks, do we listen? To what do we listen today? We listen to news and media, to human voices calling for us, the earth's voice of heartbreak, and sometimes when it's all too much, we turn a deaf ear to those voices of wisdom. The voice of wisdom calling in the streets gets lost in the voices of ease and comfort. The church is just one voice among many, clamoring for attention in the marketplace. How do the claims of a heartbroken God find a hearing in a culture that bombards us with messages about the good life? And yet, wisdom calls, calling us to show God's great love for those hidden places in need of holistic and radical justice. And so in the second part of our reading today, the tone shifts dramatically. We hear it said that wisdom is calling, but it's important to remember she is shouting. She isn't asking quietly, she is shouting to be heard, and has some harsh words for those who don't want to hear it. At the town center, she makes that speech. The purpose of the book of Proverbs is to speak to humanity and the moral condition that governs our lives. It's to speak directly into the mundane work life that we all routinely inhabit. To speak truth into the everyday, not just the holy, sacred, beloved sites, but into our streets. She's not dwelling in an ivy tower. She speaks in the streets. She derides those who would turn away from her. She condemns them. Because I have called you and you refused, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when panic strikes you. Ouch. Where is that always loving God we've been promised? Where is the one who will accept sinners and outcasts? Wisdom doesn't pull any punches, and yet the truth is that vehemence, that violence, that distress for those who don't listen helps us save our vision of the all-loving God from it being used against us. Wisdom tells us here that while God is for all people, when the people are not for God, that is not God's doing. It isn't God's doing to make a hurricane come upon those who don't meet some human-created criteria of goodness. God is not calling children to die or be in pain, period. God does not test us by putting more upon those who are already struggling. God knows we struggle. God knows that the desert is harsh to those without water. God's love is unwavering, and that divine love plunges God into the whirlwind of our created creaturely suffering. And so God puts it into our hearts to change. God weeps with us when we inflict pain upon our fellows with intention or by inaction. God weeps. And if we choose not to listen to that God nudge, then wisdom says, "Therefore you shall eat the fruit of their way and be sated with your devices." Or, "You've made your bed, now lie in it." In a way, we as humanity are reaping what we have sowed. For generations, we have let something other than God's ultimate compassion be our guiding force, and now we see the effects. Climate change, bringing monster storm after monster storm, the good of all people subjugated to the want of a few. It's a trying time to be engaged in social justice. As humanity, we have allowed ourselves to be swayed by what is easy but shows less about how we care for others. The caregiving professions make less than those that create profit across the board. When we culturally admire someone, it's not those who show respect for life and human dignity. What we promote is profit. And it's a cancer that we must excise to allow God's compassion to flow. Wisdom's harsh words sound just that, harsh. But the reality of the pain that we have allowed is harsh too. In a world of foolishly and fatally misplaced sensitivities, wisdom's insensitivity is needed to move us in a God-given and God-desired direction toward maturity. Wisdom cries out in the streets, and she never stops. As long as there is injustice, wisdom will work and call and bring justice to her people. She is urging people to realize the consequences of unwise living. She wants them to find a path. And while her words are harsh, her criticism pointed, wisdom still leaves some room for us to grow. Those who listen to me will be secure and will live at ease, without dread of disaster. Perhaps wisdom wants to awaken us to this injustice that exists, and that all should join with wisdom in creating the community of justice and peace. She knows God's great love for people who are living as refugees, far from homeland, facing insecurity. She knows God's great love for children who are in immigrant detention systems, and for families who have been separated. Wisdom knows God's love for us in our churches and in our communities in need of help, and for all the prayers that burden our hearts. She is crying out in the public square, in busy streets, at city gates, in art exhibits. So will we accept the invitation to embrace the call, to embrace God's empathy before it's too late, to find ways to face others' suffering without emotionally shutting down or feeling burnt out? This is what wisdom is calling us to. Not just to know the world's pain, but to be moved and aware of our own power. Knowledge is not wisdom. Wisdom is something different. Wisdom is aware of its own power and brings this understanding to knowledge. Wisdom is present among those who live in God's community, in communion with God. And wisdom is present in resistance to culture. Wisdom is the creative resistance that the photographers outside these doors are engaged in, bringing those of us thousands of miles away into their experience of border life. and in that experience, moving us to understand and advocate for change, to not allow ourselves to be shut down or overwhelmed. Sports writer Zito Madu wrote this week about the public outcry over Colin Kaepernick's Nike ad. And he said, social justice should challenge the fundamental world we live in and be measured by change in human conditions. This is the call of wisdom, a call to wise up and listen. Not just about the border, not just in visions of art, but in advertising, in branding, in life together. All of that, wisdom is calling for us. He wrote this: justice is about restoring dignity to people and requires systematic change through unsexy and unmarketable processes. So while Kaepernick and Nike are one story, and the border is another, what is visible through all of it is God's wisdom. For prophets, for teachers, for leaders, for us here who hear these words, who seek God and struggle with peace and justice, we must accept the challenge. Accept the challenge to restore dignity, to seek wholeness and radical justice, to stand with people living as refugees, for immigrants in our nation who wonder if they are really welcome, who fear on a daily basis, for children afraid to find caregivers, and for us in our churches to find a way toward just peace, that God's compassion might reign. Wisdom calls us to restore the world. If we can do it, let us be together in that work. Amen.
And amen.
As we continue on today, I invite you into a spirit of prayer, that we might find a way into God's vision of compassion, into God's compassionate reign here upon this earth, as we engage and sing together.
We join me in prayer. O giver of wisdom, giver of hope and assurance, giver of life itself, we come before you today with our hearts filled with many things, with joy, with love, with passion, some of us with hurt and pain and struggle and uncertainty for the future, but we all come and we seek your wisdom, oh God. We seek your strength and your light and your love and your peace. So God, bind us in the spirit of your wisdom. Bind us this day with your love. Help us all to be mindful of your presence each and every moment as we gather here in this place. As we do, we lift up prayers of these, your people. And this day, we lift up a prayer for Maureen, who's in palliative care at Samaritan Bethany. We lift up prayer for those who are in chronic pain and live with that day to day. We lift up prayers this day for a friend Barb, who is undergoing surgery on Wednesday, which will determine the extent of her cancer. We lift up prayers for all those struggling with addictions, and especially for those families who have loved ones. We pray for their support and courage. We lift up, especially this day, all the ministries of this church, in particular for our Stephen ministers as they continue to reach out and provide incredible care and love for so many. And this day, oh God, as we gather, we lift up special prayers of healing, special prayers of blessing for all those who are struggling with cancer or other disease. We lift up all those who grieve this day, especially for the Harberts family whose family was taken this week. Lift up a prayer for Brandon, especially for his wife Rachel and daughter Emerson, who passed away as a result of a car accident. We lift up all those others in our midst who are just grieving at the loss of their loved one. Bring your peace, bring your hope, and bring your joy. And God, as we gather, help us always be mindful to always put our lens on what you've called us to do, to be your hands and feet and your light to this world around us. Help us always to see your wisdom work, your justice work before us, that together we might be your church in this world. We pray all this in Jesus' name as we gather together, for you call us to be one, for here we are. Send us.
What better call could there be to serve the world than be to the carrier of God's compassion? Will you please all stand and rise and join with me in saying these words together? Because this is our church.
We make it what it is.
Others will be welcomed.
If I am welcoming.
It has done and will do a great work.
If I work.
It will make generous gifts to many causes.
If I am a generous giver of my time, talents, and treasures.
It will be a sanctuary for social justice and always for peace.
If I advocate for marginalized communities and practice peace in every setting of my life.
It will be a church that embraces all, builds community, grows faith, and transforms lives.
If I make it what it is, practice these things.
Therefore, with the grace of God, we shall be a safe and inclusive church living God's radical, loving, compassionate message. And I shall dedicate myself to being all the things I want my church to be. Amen.